The morning sun streamed through the tall windows of Kensington Palace as William sat at his desk, going through the daily briefings. His coffee had grown cold as he read through the official documents that would change everything. The words on the paper seemed to blur together as he processed what lay ahead for him and Kate. Kate was in the garden with their children, watching them play among the roses she had carefully tended over the years. Her laughter echoed across the grounds as Charlotte chased Louis around the fountain, while George tried to catch butterflies with a small net. She had no idea that William was inside, holding news that would alter their entire world. The palace staff moved quietly through the halls, sensing that something important was happening. They had worked with the royal couple for years and could tell when significant decisions were being made. The usual cheerful chatter was replaced by hushed whispers and careful steps on the marble floors. William finally stood up from his chair and walked to the window overlooking the garden. He watched his wife and children, his heart heavy with the weight of what he needed to tell them. Kate looked up at that moment and saw him standing there. Even from a distance, she could see something was different about his expression. She left the children with their nanny and walked slowly toward the palace. Each step felt heavier as she noticed the serious look on William's face. When she entered his study, he was standing by the fireplace, still holding the official documents in his hands. "What is it?" she asked softly, knowing that whatever news he carried would change their lives forever. William looked at her with eyes full of love and concern, struggling to find the right words to share what he had learned. The room fell silent except for the distant sounds of their children playing outside. Kate moved closer to him, her hands trembling slightly as she prepared herself for whatever was coming. The afternoon light cast long shadows across the room as they stood facing each other, about to embark on a journey that would test their strength and love. Outside, the children continued their games, unaware that their parents were inside, discussing something that would affect their entire family. The palace gardens had never seemed more beautiful, and the sound of their innocent laughter created a bittersweet soundtrack to this life-changing moment. William finally spoke, his voice gentle but firm, as he began to explain the situation they now faced. Kate listened carefully, her face showing a mixture of understanding and quiet determination. They both knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together with the same grace and dignity they had always shown. The documents in William's hands contained details of a decision that had been months in the making. Palace officials had been working behind the scenes, preparing for this moment while the royal couple continued their daily duties, unaware of what was being planned for their future. As the conversation continued, both William and Kate began to understand the full scope of what was being asked of them. It was not just about their roles as royals, but about their family, their children's future, and the legacy they would leave behind. The weight of responsibility had never felt heavier than it did in that quiet study, with the sounds of their children's joy drifting in from the garden outside. The family dinner that evening was quieter than usual. William and Kate had decided to wait until after the children went to bed before having their most important conversation. George, Charlotte, and Louis chatted about their day, completely unaware of the serious discussions that had been happening between their parents. Kate barely touched her food, her mind racing with thoughts about how this decision would affect each of their children. George, being the oldest, would understand more than the younger ones, but explaining this to him would still be incredibly difficult. She watched him tell a story about his school day and wondered how different his future might become. After tucking the children into bed, William and Kate returned to their private sitting room. They had always been a team, supporting each other through every challenge their royal life had brought them. But this felt different, bigger and more personal than anything they had faced before. "How do we even begin to explain this to them?" Kate asked, settling into her favorite chair by the window. The same window where she often sat in the mornings, planning their family activities and enjoying quiet moments before the day's duties began. William sat across from her, running his hands through his hair in a gesture she knew meant he was deeply worried. They had always protected their children from the more difficult aspects of royal life, creating as normal a childhood as possible within the extraordinary circumstances of their position. The palace walls seemed to hold the weight of their conversation as they talked late into the night. They discussed every possible outcome, every way this decision might affect their family's future. Kate's practical nature came through as she asked detailed questions about timing, logistics, and the children's education. "We've always known this day might come," William said quietly, though saying the words out loud made everything feel more real. They had talked about this possibility in abstract terms before, but now it was concrete, with dates and plans already being made by others. Kate stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the London skyline. The city lights twinkled in the distance, representing millions of people who looked to their family for stability and inspiration. The responsibility they felt toward those people was part of what made this decision so complex. Their phone calls to family members over the next few days were emotionally charged. William's father had mixed feelings about the decision, understanding the reasoning but worrying about the impact on his grandchildren. Kate's parents were supportive but concerned about how drastically their daughter's life was about to change once again. Each conversation brought new considerations they hadn't thought of before. The practicalities of such a major life change seemed overwhelming when they tried to list everything that would need to be arranged. But underneath all the logistics, the emotional impact remained the most challenging aspect. Kate found herself walking through their home differently, noticing details she had previously taken for granted. The family photos on the piano, the children's artwork displayed proudly on the refrigerator, the comfortable chaos of their family life that had taken years to create. William spent hours in his study, making phone calls and reviewing documents, but Kate could see the stress taking its toll on him. He felt the weight of being the one to deliver this news to their children, knowing that his words would change how they saw their future. The couple made a pact to present a united front to their children, no matter how difficult the conversation would be. They practiced different ways to explain the situation, wanting to be honest while also being age-appropriate for each child's level of understanding. Saturday morning arrived with unusual nervousness in the household. William and Kate had chosen this day to tell their children about the major changes coming to their family. They wanted to do it at home in their most comfortable space, where the children felt safe and loved. Kate prepared their favorite breakfast while William set up a cozy area in the living room with cushions and blankets. They wanted this conversation to feel as warm and secure as possible, even though the news they were sharing would shake their children's understanding of their future. George was the first to sense that something important was happening. At his age, he had developed an awareness of when his parents were having serious discussions. He noticed how they kept looking at each other during breakfast, communicating with glances in the way that parents do when they're preparing for something difficult. "Are we in trouble?" Charlotte asked innocently when she saw her parents' serious expressions. Kate quickly reassured her with a hug, explaining that they just wanted to have an important family talk. Louis, being the youngest, was more interested in his toys than the conversation, which made Kate's heart ache knowing how this news would eventually affect him too. When they all gathered in the living room, William began by reminding the children how much he and Kate loved them. He explained that sometimes families have to make big decisions together, and that's what they needed to discuss today. His voice was steady, but Kate could see the emotion he was holding back. George asked direct questions, wanting to understand exactly what was changing and why. His maturity surprised both parents, even though they had always known he was wise beyond his years. Charlotte listened carefully, asking if they would still be a family and if they would still live together. Kate took over when William's voice became shaky, explaining that they would always be together as a family, but that their lives were going to change in some important ways. She used simple words to describe complex royal duties and responsibilities, trying to help the children understand without overwhelming them. The hardest part was explaining the timeline. The children wanted to know exactly when these changes would happen and what it would mean for their school, their friends, and their daily routines. William and Kate had to admit that they were still figuring out many of these details themselves. Louis, despite being young, seemed to understand that something big was happening. He climbed onto Kate's lap and asked if they were moving away. Kate held him tightly, explaining that any changes they made would be together as a family, and that some things would stay the same even as others changed. The conversation lasted much longer than William and Kate had expected. The children had so many questions, some practical and others emotional. George wanted to know if he would still be able to play football with his friends. Charlotte asked if her favorite nanny would still be with them. As the morning turned into afternoon, the family found themselves having deeper discussions about duty. service and what it means to help other people. William explained how their family had always tried to make a positive difference in the world, and how this decision was part of continuing that tradition. Kate watched her children process this information, seeing their personalities shine through in how they each handled the news. George became more thoughtful and asked practical questions. Charlotte focused on the emotional aspects and wanted reassurance about their relationships. Louis simply wanted to make sure his parents would still be there to read him bedtime stories. By the end of the day, the children seemed to understand that their family was entering a new chapter. They didn't fully grasp all the implications yet, but they trusted their parents to guide them through whatever was coming. The living room that had started the day feeling tense now felt filled with love and mutual support. That evening, as Kate tucked each child into bed, they each had different questions and concerns. But they also showed remarkable resilience and adaptability, qualities that made both parents proud and hopeful about navigating the changes ahead together as a family. The weeks following their family conversation were filled with careful planning and emotional preparation. Kate found herself making lists of everything that needed to be organized, from the children's school arrangements to personal belongings that held special meaning for their family. Each decision required thoughtful consideration of both practical needs and emotional significance. William spent his days in meetings with palace officials, working through the complex logistics of their transition. Every detail had to be planned carefully, from security arrangements to public communications. He often returned home feeling exhausted by the weight of all the decisions that needed to be made on behalf of his family. The children began to understand more about what the changes would mean for their daily lives. George started asking more sophisticated questions about their future responsibilities and what would be expected of him. Kate was amazed by his maturity, but also concerned about how much responsibility he felt at such a young age. Charlotte became more clingy during this period, wanting extra bedtime stories and reassurance that her parents would always be there for her. Kate spent extra time with her, creating new traditions and memories while assuring her that their love and family bond would never change, no matter what else happened. Kate began the difficult process of going through their personal belongings, deciding what to keep, what to give away, and what to store. Each room held memories of their life together, from baby photos to artwork the children had made in school. Every item seemed to tell a story of their family's journey. The palace staff, who had become like extended family over the years, began their own preparations for the transition. Many of them had worked with William and Kate since their early married years and felt deeply connected to the family. The upcoming changes were emotional for them as well. William and Kate made special efforts to maintain their children's routines during this uncertain time. They continued with swimming lessons, piano practice, and weekend family activities, knowing that consistency would help the children feel secure as everything else changed around them. Private moments between William and Kate became more precious during this period. They would often find themselves talking late into the night, sharing worries and hopes for their family's future. Their bond strengthened as they navigated this challenging time together, supporting each other through the stress and uncertainty. The couple also began having important conversations with the children's teachers and close friends' families. They wanted to ensure that their children would have continued support and understanding from the people who cared about them most. These conversations were often emotional for everyone involved. Kate started a special project with each child, creating memory books filled with photos and stories from their current home. She wanted them to have something tangible to remember this chapter of their lives, something they could look back on with fondness rather than sadness. William took on the responsibility of explaining their situation to extended family members and close friends. Each conversation required careful thought about how much to share and when. Some people were supportive immediately, while others needed time to understand and accept the family's decision. The emotional toll of preparation was significant for both parents. Kate found herself crying unexpectedly while packing certain items or looking at family photos. William struggled with moments of doubt, wondering if they were making the right choice for their children's future happiness. Despite the challenges, there were also moments of excitement and anticipation. The family began talking about the positive aspects of their upcoming changes, the new opportunities they would have, and the different ways they could serve and help others in their new situation. As the date for their transition approached, William and Kate felt a mixture of nervousness and determination. They had done everything possible to prepare practically and emotionally, but they knew that the real test would come when they actually had to say goodbye to this chapter of their lives and embrace whatever came next. The children showed remarkable adaptability throughout this preparation period, often surprising their parents with their insights and acceptance. Their resilience gave William and Kate hope that their family would not only survive this major change but potentially grow stronger because of it. The last week in their family home felt both endless and far too short. Kate found herself wandering through rooms at different times of day, trying to memorize how the morning light fell across the kitchen table, where they had shared thousands of family meals, and how the evening shadows stretched across the living room where the children had played countless games. William organized final meetings with his staff and colleagues, but his mind often drifted to memories of bringing each of their babies home to this house, watching them take their first steps in these hallways, and celebrating birthdays and holidays in these rooms that had witnessed so much love and laughter. The children sensed the approaching change in ways that surprised their parents. George became more helpful around the house, volunteering to pack his own belongings and helping his younger siblings with theirs. Charlotte asked thoughtful questions about their new life, showing wisdom beyond her years as she tried to understand what lay ahead. Louis, though still young, seemed to pick up on the emotional atmosphere in the house. He spent more time close to his parents, often climbing onto their laps for extra cuddles. Kate noticed he was holding onto his favorite toys more tightly and asked for the same bedtime stories repeatedly, seeking comfort in familiar routines. Kate planned special final activities for the family to do together in their home. They had movie nights in the living room, complete with popcorn and blankets on the floor. They cooked favorite family recipes together in the kitchen, with each child having a special job to help with the meal preparation. The palace staff began their own goodbyes, some of whom had been with the family since William and Kate's wedding day. These conversations were deeply emotional, as these people had not just been employees but had become cherished parts of their daily lives, sharing in birthdays, holidays, and quiet family moments. William spent hours in his study, going through papers and personal items that represented different phases of his life and career. He found letters from his grandmother, photos from official events that had seemed so important at the time, and drawings the children had made for him over the years. Kate organized final playdates with the children's closest friends, wanting to create lasting memories and maintain important relationships despite the upcoming changes. She watched the children play together, knowing these casual afternoon visits would become more complicated in their new circumstances. The couple also made time for private moments together, taking evening walks in their garden and talking about their hopes and concerns for the future. They reminded each other of their commitment to keeping their family strong and united, no matter what challenges lay ahead. As they packed the last of their personal belongings, each family member found items that held special significance. George discovered a photo from his first day of school. Charlotte found a drawing she had made for Mother's Day, and Louis insisted on personally packing his favorite stuffed animal. The final night in the house was spent having a family dinner at their kitchen table, sharing favorite memories from their time in this home. Each family member told stories about special moments they remembered, creating a verbal scrapbook of their life together in this place. Kate and William stayed up late after the children were asleep. Sitting together in their empty living room surrounded by packed boxes, they talked about all the dreams they had shared in this house, from planning their children's futures to imagining family vacations and quiet Sunday mornings. The next morning arrived with a mixture of anticipation and sadness. The children woke up in their familiar rooms for the last time, and Kate helped them get dressed in outfits she had carefully chosen for this important day. Everyone moved more slowly than usual, as if trying to make these final moments last longer. As they prepared to leave, each family member took a moment to say goodbye to their home in their own way. William stood in his study, looking out at the garden where he had spent so many peaceful moments. Kate paused in the kitchen, remembering all the conversations and meals that had happened there. The children walked through their rooms one last time, touching familiar walls and looking out windows that had framed their childhood views. Despite their sadness about leaving, there was also excitement in their voices as they talked about the adventure that was about to begin. The morning of their departure dawned clear and bright, as if nature itself wanted to provide a beautiful backdrop for this significant moment in their family's story. Kate stood at their bedroom window one final time, watching the sunrise paint the sky in soft colors while William finished the last details of their packing. The cars arrived precisely on schedule, but somehow the family wasn't quite ready for this moment to actually happen. Despite months of preparation, the reality of leaving felt surreal. Kate gathered the children around her in the front hallway, the same spot where they had taken countless family photos over the years. George stood tall beside his father, trying to be brave but occasionally glancing back at the staircase, where he had spent so many mornings racing down to breakfast. Charlotte held Kate's hand tightly, her eyes wide as she processed that this was really happening. Louis bounced between excitement and uncertainty, not fully understanding the permanence of this goodbye. The palace staff had gathered in the courtyard to see them off, many with tears in their eyes. These people had been part of their daily lives for years, sharing in everything from celebration dinners to quiet family evenings. Kate hugged each one personally, thanking them for the love and care they had shown her family. William shook hands with his longtime colleagues, men and women who had become trusted advisors and friends. Some of these relationships had lasted through multiple phases of his life, and saying goodbye felt like closing chapters of his own personal story, not just his professional one. The children were allowed to take one final walk through the garden, where they had played countless games of hide-and-seek among the rose bushes Kate had planted. They picked a few flowers to press in their memory books, wanting to take a piece of this special place with them wherever they went. As the family gathered near the cars, Kate and William shared a moment that would be remembered by everyone present. William turned to Kate and took her hands in his, looking into her eyes with an expression of deep love and gratitude for everything they had shared and overcome together. "We've built something beautiful here," he said softly, his voice carrying just enough for those nearby to hear. "And we'll build something beautiful wherever we go next, because we're doing it together." Kate's eyes filled with tears as she squeezed his hands, understanding that this moment represented not just an ending, but also a new beginning for their family. Their embrace lasted longer than anyone expected. It wasn't just a goodbye to their home, but an acknowledgement of everything this place had meant to their love story, their family's growth, and their journey together. Everyone watching could see the depth of their connection and their commitment to facing the future as a united team. The children joined their parents for a final family hug, creating a circle of love and support that seemed to encompass all the happiness and security they had found in this home. Charlotte wiped away a tear, while George put his arm around Louis, showing the protective instinct he had developed as the older brother. As they finally got into the cars, Kate rolled down her window and waved goodbye to their home one last time. The building stood majestically in the morning light, holding within its walls all the memories of laughter, love, and family life that had made it so much more than just a house. The drive away was quiet at first, each family member lost in their own thoughts and memories. But gradually, the children began asking questions about their destination and sharing their excitement about the new adventures ahead. Kate and William answered with smiles, their sadness about leaving balanced by hope for the future. Looking back through the rear window, William could see their home growing smaller in the distance, but he felt his family's love and unity growing stronger. Kate reached over and took his hand, a gesture that spoke of their shared commitment to making this transition a positive experience for their children. The touching farewell had shown everyone present the grace and dignity with which this family approached both endings and beginnings. Their love for each other was evident in every gesture, every word, and every moment of support they offered one another during this emotional transition. As their cars moved toward their new future, the family carried with them not just their belongings, but the unbreakable bonds and beautiful memories that would help them build a new chapter of their story together, wherever that journey might lead them.